Welcome back to the David Kurten Show. I'm David Kurten here on today's News Talk TNT, and I'm delighted to have with me on the show Mads Palsvig from Denmark. And Mads is the leader of the Prosperity Party in Denmark. I met Mads a few years ago at the start of the whole lockdown era when we created the World Health Alliance, and that was a fantastic thing that started in 2020. We were both there at the beginning, but we've both gone on to pursue political careers and do what we can to fight for freedom in the UK, and Mads also in Denmark. Mads, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Good to see you again.
Really good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. How are things in Denmark? I mean, you run the Prosperity Party, which is a great name for a political party. I love it. How are things in the Prosperity Party and the situation in politics in Denmark at the moment?
Well, we have a one-party system, and since the entire Danish Parliament decided to carpet bomb Libya, there has been no opposition to any question ever since. We have one party. Oh, I mean, when I grew up, we used to have several points of view. We had the red and the blue. You even had some people in the middle who would be against, sometimes with swaying from side to side. I grew up with having a political debate. When I was young, I mean, I was very right-wing. I was pro Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and most of my friends were left-wing. It was no big deal. We would be arguing in class, and then afterwards we'll be best friends. Now that is not done anymore. If you don't agree 100%, you cannot be in the same room anymore. It's just the whole world has changed in 30 years.
I noticed that as well here in the UK. It's like, in the 90s when I was a young man, it was, you would mix with people from all different walks of life, all different groups and all different opinions. But you go to the pub and have a drink and it wouldn't matter. But yeah, these days, people are so purist these days. I even have people saying, I agree with you on 99% of stuff, but there's this one thing I don't like, so I'm not going to support you anymore.
Right.
But when you say you've got one party state, is that one party that dominates, or is that lots of different parties that have the same opinions? So there is no difference of opinion between them.
Yeah, it's the latter. We have
Right.
12 parties or something like that, and they are allegedly blue, red, green, and alternative and anti-immigration. But at the end of the day, they all vote for the same thing. They all think Putin is Hitler. They all think that vaccines are superb. They all think it's a great idea to lock down the entire country. They all are pro bombing Gaza because Israel has the right to defend itself, but the Palestinians do not have the right to defend themselves. I mean, it's like, excuse me. There's what? I mean, is it possible? I guess it is, because you only need to bribe 179 people. At the end of the day, it's not that many people, and the people in power, they literally run the central banks. They can produce as much money as they want, so it's not that expensive, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue. I mean, that's a massive issue, talking about the central bank and how they create money and so on. But I find this as well. There's in the UK, there's 4, maybe 5 parties if you include the Scottish nationalists who dominate Parliament. It's very hard for another party to get in on the system we have in the UK because it's first past the post. I mean, maybe it's maybe slightly easier for a challenger party in Denmark. I think you have proportional representation, but over the last 4 years, they are all, as you say, lockdown, injections, bomb, war, accelerate war with Russia and accelerate war with Gaza, even to the point where, I've called for a ceasefire here, and some people say, "Oh, that's anti-Semitic." I mean, I don't understand how people can call you anti-Semitic, and for saying that I don't want more children to be killed. Do you have that in Denmark as well?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Yeah, it is exactly the same thing, and I think it's quite ironic because you had 3 instances where killing of babies were used politically. In the First World War, they said Germans were spearing babies to church doors, which swayed the overall German, pro-German American people to go and join the World War I on the English side. And then you had in 1991, you had the famous nurse. She was not a nurse. She was a Kuwaiti princess. She said she was a nurse. She had been trained by a huge American advertising agency to say, crying, that the Iraqi soldiers took the babies out of the incubators and put them down on the cold, hard floor to die. That was the second time. And then, of course, the 40 beheaded babies on the October 7th, where it turns out that the youngest Israeli who died on that day was 3 years old. So that those three instances were used with the mainstream media, totally out of proportion. Just keep on repeating these three lies, and they all three have had a very, very large political effect for the global geopolitical situation. And then it's quite ironic that actually right now Israel is killing babies in incubators when they are bombing hospitals. They are literally lying babies in these incubators who are dying because they are being bombed. And you have babies having surgery without anesthesia. I mean, because Israel prohibits the delivery of medical supplies. So how can you lie three times with detrimental effect on the geopolitical situation, and then and be caught in these lies? Because we all know that it was a lie in the First World War. It was a lie in the 1991 First Gulf War. It was a lie the 7th of October. Even you can find Israeli mainstream newspapers writing that it cannot be true. So it's all that, and then they can get away with it this way. It's just absolutely incredible. There's almost like it's mind control. And again, we're back what we said before. You and I, when we were younger, we could argue. Will be fun. Yeah, we disagree in politics, and then we still have a beer and we're best friends.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen anymore. And I think that's part of the educational system where we are trained to look at mistakes. It's not about understanding the other person. Where does he or she come from? It's about finding where do we disagree, and then I like what you say, David, but there's just a but. And this is how we've been treated for somewhere between 12 and 17 years, whether we went to university or not. And that's why you can see that the biggest uptake of vaccines were the academics, because the people with 7 years education, they have the highest percentage of taking the vaccines, whereas the builders and everybody who was only had 9 years education, they were much smarter and looking through this. This doesn't add up. I'm not going to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I totally agree. Look, we're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back in a minute, and we'll talk much more about these topics. Welcome back to the David Kurten Show here on today's News Talk TNT. I'm delighted to have with me still Mads Palsvig, who is the leader of the Prosperity Party in Denmark. And we were talking about the things and the issues that have come against us in the last 4 years. I think we would totally agree on almost everything. The lockdowns were appalling. The injections were neither safe nor effective, that it's completely wrong to get into a war with Ukraine, and there should be a ceasefire in Gaza. But it seems that the mainstream media, fake stream media, as I call them, and the major political parties are all coalesced together, and they're pushing one of these very destructive globalist agendas, one after the other after the other. And Mads, how do we fight this?
I really would like to. I think we've had a lot of to be blatantly honest, we've had a lot of satanic propaganda through Hollywood, and we are forgetting that we are Christians, and Christians mean that we forgive. And I want to say this is very important, because what I see is collective punishment started with the treatment of the Germans. No matter whether they how many they killed in the Holocaust, a lot of Jews died, but I don't want to go into the numbers, how many. But when they killed 15 million Germans from 1945, 1949, is that not enough? When they then paid hundreds of billions of dollars in compensation, is that not enough? When is it enough? When do my Jewish friends, and I have a Jewish wife, and I have therefore I have tons of Jewish friends. I'm a banker, for God's sake. Half my colleagues, not half, but a lot of my colleagues were Jewish. So, I mean, come on, I love them, all of them. And I mean, when can they find it in their heart to say now enough is enough? Germans, they have paid enough, they have suffered enough, and if you look at the Germans alone, that's one thing. You also also have all the white guilt now. We have to suffer illegal immigration, millions of people, and with no matter what the cost of social cost or the destabilization it can get, because it's our fault with the slavery. That's our fault. And I want to go on. Also, North Korea. So every town was leveled. People don't know this. There's not a single house that was left in any town with more than 500,000 people. America just leveled the whole thing. That's collective punishment. When they flew over little Vietnamese villages, that's collective punishment. When they didn't like Gaddafi for some reason, such as he was being very nice to the African nations, paying for their mobile system, he wanted to have a gold dinar. Then they bombed the Libyan people. So what we're seeing now, the new world order since 1945 is collective punishment. This is very Old Testament. This is not New Testament. New Testament, we have a fight, we shake hands, we stop, and like in old days, Denmark and Sweden would fight, but we didn't go out and kill women and children afterwards. We would lose some of Denmark, and they would lose some of Sweden, whatever. But it wouldn't go on. Collective punishment killed the entire nation. We didn't do that. The English, French didn't do that. Come on. We need to stop this collective punishment. And that's what we're seeing in Gaza now. You are literally seeing hundreds of politicians in Israel saying that the Palestinians are Amalek, which means they're animals and they should be slaughtered, including babies. So this collective punishment, I think this is a discussion we need to take. We need to reclaim our Christianity and relearn to forgive.
Well, I mean, the West has turned away from Christianity profoundly. I mean, before perhaps the 1960s, Western Europe, North America was a profoundly Christian society, but this has been completely undermined, I would say, deliberately by cultural Marxism and other forces and factors that have tried to destroy it and destroy the connection that we have with our roots, and our roots are Christian. If we go away from that and we don't act as Christians and we don't forgive people and we go around the world doing collective punishment, like you say, we're going to cause absolute chaos and it's going to come back on us. It's very, very much disturbs me, what's happening in Gaza. And one of the things that really disturbs me is how some Christians themselves have been manipulated into supporting the military action in Gaza, the bombing of hospitals and so on, because they consider themselves to be Zionists. Now, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I'm sorry, I wish I had longer to talk. But I mean, do you see that as well among some churches? Some Christians are really not speaking or acting in a Christian way because they support Israel. They support this bombing. How are they manipulated into doing this?
I think that in Denmark and America is the same thing. The Christians support they are Zionists, so totally. But what I want to say is, they say Israel is the best friend and ally of America. What have they ever done to deserve that? And then when we see how much it has cost, the wars since 2008 has cost every American citizen $77,000 US. That is $308,000 US for a family of four. So if you ask the Americans, even if they were Zionist, okay, you are Zionist, you're pro-Israel, but do you want to spend $308,000 US since 2008 on bombing all Israel's enemies? Do you really want to do that? In countries you probably couldn't even find on a map. And we have 60 million Americans on food stamps right now. Millions are homeless. The inner cities are destroyed. There's potholes in every single road. The educational system in America is absolutely appalling unless you're super wealthy. And the same goes for the health system. So, excuse me, every single American could have owned their house without a mortgage if they had not been hoodwinked into bombing whoever Israel and the dual citizen-controlled U.S. Congress said they should bomb.
Absolutely. It doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make any common sense whatsoever. And there's massive manipulation to do this. And I fear, because some people can see through this, but it seems out of people's control to be able to do anything about it. We're out of time, unfortunately, but Mads, it's wonderful to have you on the show. I'd love to carry on talking more to you because there's so much more that we could say and perhaps get into what we can do about it. We've identified a problem. We need to solve the problem. And God bless you for everything you're doing with the Prosperity Party in Denmark. I hope you can get into the parliament and do some good things there. Thank you so much,
all the
Mads
best,
Palsvig,
David. Thanks so much. Thank you so much
for joining me. Thank you, Mads. This is today's News Talk, TNT.